Imagine a man who wakes up every single morning, drives to work, puts in 10 hours, smiles at his boss, works harder than anyone else in the room, and genuinely tries to get ahead. But before his paycheck ever touches his hands, it already belongs to someone else. A portion belongs to the bank. A portion belongs to the credit card company. A portion belongs to the auto loan. A portion belongs to the installment plan for things he bought months ago. And what's left barely carries him to the next payday. The modern world calls that normal, but the Bible calls it something far more serious. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. That is not an outdated verse. That is a financial principle written more than 3,000 years ago, before modern banking existed, before credit cards existed, before consumer debt became a lifestyle. And yet it describes with surgical precision exactly what millions of people are living right now. Most people today have been taught that debt is a tool, a lever, a shortcut to the life they want. But the Bible warns us that debt, left unchecked, misunderstood, and misused, can quietly become an invisible chain. Not a chain made of iron, a chain made of monthly invoices. It doesn't just take your money. It takes your time. It takes your peace of mind. It takes your choices. And sometimes it takes the very future that God entrusted you to steward. In this video, we are not going to talk about debt from a place of fear or legalism. We are not going to promise that paying off your debt will make you rich overnight. What we are going to do is look at debt through the lens of Scripture, through the wisdom of Solomon, through the principles of Proverbs, through the lens of stewardship, and ask a question most financial channels never ask. What does debt actually cost beyond the interest rate? Because here is the truth that needs to be said clearly. You cannot steward wealth over the long term if your soul is constantly being pulled apart by debt. The modern world has made a very dangerous swap. It no longer asks, "Can I afford this?" It asks, "Do I qualify for this loan?" And those two questions lead to completely different lives. When you ask whether you qualify, you are letting the lender define the ceiling of your life. When you ask whether you can truly afford it, you are exercising the wisdom, patience, and discernment that godly stewardship requires. Think about what this has done to an entire generation. A young professional with an unstable income buys a car on installments because he wants to look successful. But he didn't just buy a car. He bought interest payments, insurance costs, repair anxiety, and the constant fear of job loss. A family uses credit cards to sustain a lifestyle slightly above their real income. They post beautiful photos. They eat at nice restaurants. But behind the image, a quiet debt grows every single month. A business owner borrows aggressively to expand fast, without stable cash flow. When the market shifts, his business doesn't collapse because of a bad idea. It collapses because debt demanded payment on schedule, regardless of whether revenue showed up that month. Debt is dangerous, precisely because it gives you the feeling of ownership before you have the actual capacity to own. It allows you to live in the future, while forcing the future to pay the price. And that is why the Bible doesn't treat debt casually. Because anything that controls your obligations will eventually influence your freedom. Before you borrow for anything, ask yourself 4 questions. Am I borrowing to create real value or to feed a desire? Does this loan increase my capacity to serve and produce? If my income dropped by 30%, could I still make this payment? And perhaps most importantly, am I borrowing because it's wise or because I'm simply unwilling to wait? The wise person doesn't only ask what the interest rate is. The wise person asks, how long will this debt rule over me? That word rule is not accidental. When Solomon wrote that the borrower becomes servant to the lender, he was not making a moral judgment about poverty. He was describing a transfer of power. The lender sets the terms. The borrower must live by those terms. The lender decides the due date. The borrower must scramble to meet it. The lender charges interest. The borrower pays with sweat, time, and worry. Solomon was not just talking about money. He was talking about control. Debt is a transfer of power. When you borrow, you don't just receive funds. You receive an obligation, and that obligation can follow you long after the joy of whatever you purchased has completely faded. Consider the person who buys a new phone on installments. The excitement lasts a few days. The payment plan lasts 12 months. A family borrows to host a wedding beyond their means. The celebration lasts one day. The financial strain lasts years. A person borrows to invest because someone convinced them it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But when the investment drops, they don't just lose money. They lose peace because that money was never truly theirs to risk. Here is what makes debt so quietly dangerous. It can rob you of your ability to say no. You want to leave a toxic job, but you can't because you still have debt. You want to spend weekends with your children, but you're forced to take extra shifts because you still have debt. You want to give generously, to invest in what matters, to respond to a calling, but you're anchored to old obligations. That is the deeper meaning of the word servant. You are not chained by iron. You are chained by invoices. So here is your first practical step. Write down every single debt you carry. Who do you owe? How much? What is the interest rate? What is the monthly payment? When does it end? And which debt steals the most of your peace? Don't let debt live in the darkness of vague anxiety. The less clearly you see it, the more power it holds over you. When you name it, measure it, and face it, you begin to reclaim the authority of a steward. The wise person doesn't pretend to be free. The wise person confronts the chain so they can begin removing it. This brings us to a principle I want to name clearly, the do not sell tomorrow rule. The wise person does not sell the freedom of tomorrow to buy the comfort of today. Consumer debt is almost always a forward sale. You are selling next month's income. You are selling next year's time. You are selling your family's peace. You are selling your ability to invest. You are selling your right to choose. The Bible is not opposed to using resources to build a future, but the Bible gives a serious warning against using the future to satisfy the desires of today. This is the difference between stewardship and impulse. Stewardship asks, does this align with the responsibility God has placed in my hands? Impulse asks, do I want it right now? There is an important distinction to make here. Not all debt is the same. A person who borrows to develop skills that will increase their earning capacity with a clear repayment plan may be using debt as a discipline tool. But a person who borrows to buy expensive clothing, a luxury car, a vacation only to project an image of success is selling tomorrow to purchase a feeling that exists today. The lack of wisdom is not in using debt. The lack of wisdom is in treating all debt as leverage when some debt is simply a trap. Before any borrowing decision, place it into one of three categories. Productive debt, a loan with genuine potential to generate income, build assets, or develop lasting skill. Necessary debt, a loan serving a real need managed with strict discipline. And consumptive debt, a loan purchased for something that loses value immediately, satisfies a passing emotion, or maintains a social image. The wise person avoids the third category entirely, controls the second with discipline, and only considers the first after careful planning. Because the goal is not to avoid debt out of fear. The goal is to protect freedom out of love for what God has entrusted to you. One of the most subtle ways debt does damage is this: it distorts your priorities. When you carry no debt, you can ask, what matters most? But when debt is heavy, the question changes. Which payment is due first? Debt replaces wisdom-driven decisions with urgency-driven ones. Your family needs time, but the debt needs a payment. Your body needs rest, but the debt needs extra income. Your heart wants to give, but the debt says there is nothing left. Your future needs investment, but the past keeps sending invoices every single month. A father wants to be present on Saturday morning, but he's working a second job because of consumer debt he accumulated 3 years ago. He didn't borrow to lose time with his children, but that is exactly what happened. A mother wants to start saving for her family's future, but the credit card interest eats through every dollar of margin. She doesn't lack love or intention. She lacks financial breathing room because of old decisions. Solomon describes the wise person as someone who looks ahead, who prepares, who weighs consequences before acting. But debt pulls people back into constant reaction mode. When debt rules, vision shrinks. You stop planning for the future because you're too exhausted managing the present. The biblical priority order for money is not complicated. Meet genuine needs first. Honor your obligations honestly. Repay debt with a real plan. Build a reserve for hardship. Invest for the future. Give with a faithful heart. And only after all of that, enjoy the rest. The wise person does not let desire jump to the front of that line. There is another trap that debt sets, and it is one of the most convincing. It causes people to confuse burden with blessing. Not everything that enters your life looking like prosperity is a blessing. A house can be a gift from God. But if the mortgage is so heavy that your family lives in constant tension, it can become a prison with beautiful furniture. A car can be useful. But if it forces you into anxiety every single month, it is no longer just transportation, it has become your master. A business opportunity might be genuinely good, but if you borrowed in arrogance, without calculation and without preparation, that opportunity can become one of the most painful lessons of your life. A real blessing doesn't just make you look wealthier. A real blessing helps you steward better. The couple who buys the largest house on the street to prove they've made it and then fights constantly about money, serves stress at every dinner table, and lets their children absorb the anxiety may look successful from outside. From inside, it is a beautiful cage. The salesperson who buys a luxury vehicle to impress clients, but drains all working capital to do it, has improved his image while weakening his foundation. The Bible does not teach us to evaluate wealth by appearances. It teaches us to evaluate by fruit. Does this produce peace? Does this help me be more faithful? Does this make my family stronger? Does this bring me closer to freedom or deeper into dependence? Before making any large purchase on debt, run the fruit test. After this monthly payment, can I still save? Can I still give? Can I still rest? Will my family be under strain? Am I buying this because of genuine need or because of ego? If a decision robs you of peace, it deserves a second look, no matter how much it resembles success on the outside. At the root of most consumer debt is this: desire moved faster than discipline. The Bible speaks extensively about self-control, patience, and temperance, not just as spiritual virtues, but as the very foundation of financial health. Consumer debt appears when you want something now and refuse to wait. And the modern financial system has built an entire industry around telling you, you don't have to wait. Take it now. Pay later. But later never disappears. It simply stands behind the door, waiting for its scheduled moment. Replacing a phone that still works perfectly because the new model is out. Changing cars because a neighbor changed cars. Putting designer clothes on a credit card to look like someone you're not yet. Borrowing to go on vacation because you don't want to feel behind your friends on social media. These are not just purchasing decisions. They are tests of the inner person. Are you managing money, or is money serving a wounded ego? Consumer debt has a particular cruelty. The joy evaporates almost instantly, but the obligation endures for a long time. The meal is finished. The trip is over. The item is outdated. The feeling is gone. But the payment schedule remains. This is why wise people do not dismiss small debts. Many small chains can still bind a strong person. A practical rule for non-essential purchases: wait 30 days. If After 30 days you still need it, build a real savings plan to pay with actual money. If it was only emotion, the feeling will fade. If it is genuine need, it will still be there. The wise person does not let today's emotion sign a contract with tomorrow. There is a principle in Scripture that most financial teachers overlook, and it comes from the life of Joseph. When Egypt experienced 7 years of abundance, Joseph didn't consume it all. He stored it deliberately because he knew lean years were coming. This is an ancient financial truth. Seasons of abundance are not only for enjoyment, they are for preparation. But debt does the opposite. Debt takes your season of abundance and uses it to pay for your season of past desire. Instead of storing for the future, you are paying for old decisions. A person earns well for several years but saves nothing because every surplus is consumed by car payments, credit card bills, and consumer debt. When the job disappears, there is no reserve. A family's income increases year after year, but their debt load increases at the same pace. Income grows, but freedom doesn't, because every increase in earnings was immediately matched by a new loan. Without a reserve, every unexpected event becomes a crisis. A broken-down car is a crisis. A medical bill is a crisis. A slow month in business is a crisis. A single unexpected expense is a crisis. And people without reserves are forced to borrow. And people who borrow without control never build reserves. That cycle has kept countless families financially stuck for decades. Build your reserve in stages. Start with a small cushion to handle minor emergencies without borrowing. Then build 1 month of living expenses. Then work toward 3 to 6 months. And commit to this. The emergency fund is not for desire. It is only for genuine emergencies. This is not a failure of faith. This is what stewardship looks like. Joseph didn't store grain because he was afraid. He stored it because he was wise. One of the most heartbreaking costs of excessive debt is rarely discussed. It silences generosity. One of the highest purposes of money in Scripture is to enable people to serve, to give, to lift others up, and to invest in things that last beyond themselves. But when debt is overwhelming, a heart that truly wants to be generous finds that the hands have nothing left to open. You see someone in need, but you cannot help. You want to support aging parents, but you're trapped. You want to give to something meaningful, but every dollar has a creditor waiting for it first. You want to invest in a mission that matters, but the past keeps pulling you backward. Debt doesn't just limit your lifestyle, it limits your usefulness. A person who wants to pay for a sibling's education but cannot because consumer debt consumed every margin. A family that genuinely wants to serve their community but finds themselves perpetually short because they are living above their real means. A person with a generous heart whose good intentions never leave the emotional stage because the finances are in chaos. Do not let the things you bought to impress strangers take away your ability to help the people who actually need you. Do not let a car, a phone, a vacation, or a counterfeit lifestyle steal your capacity for real generosity. Money in Scripture is not just income. It is seed. It is a tool. It is a responsibility. Generosity that lasts requires a wise foundation. And now we arrive at the most important truth of all. Getting out of debt does not begin with money. It begins with honesty. Most people are not stuck in debt because they don't earn enough. They are stuck because they are unwilling to face the truth. They don't know their total debt load. They don't know what interest is actually costing them. They don't know where their money goes each month. They don't know which debt is the most dangerous. And they don't know whether they are spending out of real need or emotional reaction. The Bible places enormous value on truth, on light, on the courage to see clearly. You cannot heal what you refuse to look at directly. The person who makes only the minimum payment on their credit card each month and calls themselves financially okay, while interest quietly erodes their future, is choosing comfortable blindness over uncomfortable clarity. The couple who avoids money conversations to prevent arguments while the silence allows the problem to grow unchecked. The business owner who watches revenue but ignores cash flow, believing growth is happening while debt is actually outrunning profit. The most dangerous financial position is not having debt. It is having debt with no plan. Debt without a plan is debt in control. Debt with a plan is debt being brought into the light. Build your debt exit map. List every debt. Sort them by interest rate or by balance. Choose your strategy. Attack the highest interest first, or eliminate the smallest balances first to build momentum. Cut consumptive spending ruthlessly. Stop creating new debt during the repayment process. Direct every available dollar toward elimination. Track your progress every week. And remember this, most of all, do not pray for God to remove the consequences while you continue practicing the habits that created them. Stewardship means you pray and you act with wisdom. The Bible's warning about debt is not rooted in fear of money. It is rooted in God's care for your freedom, your peace, and your capacity to steward the life He has entrusted to you. Debt is not merely a number on a page. Debt is a question of ownership. Who controls your time? Who is making your choices? Who is eating the first portion of everything you work for? Who holds the future you were called to build? If you work faithfully every month, but your paycheck belongs to someone else, before you ever get to manage it, this is not just a budget issue. This is a wake-up call. Solomon never said, never use any form of debt. But Solomon warned clearly that the borrower enters a power relationship. And the wise person never enters a power relationship without fully understanding the cost. The wise person is not cautious about debt out of fear. The wise person is cautious about debt out of love for freedom. The wise person does not live to impress others. The wise person lives to steward faithfully. The wise person does not sell tomorrow to buy today. The wise person plants today so that tomorrow can be free. That is the difference between a spender and a steward. The spender asks, "What can I buy?" The steward asks, "What have I been given, and how do I manage it well?" Your money is not just income. It is a responsibility. Your time is not just a schedule. It is your life. Your freedom is not just a feeling. It is a gift, and it deserves to be protected by wisdom. If you are in debt right now, do not receive this video as condemnation. Receive it as a bell ringing clearly. You can begin again. You can face the truth. You can build a plan. You can cut the habits that are costing you the most. You can build a reserve. You can pay down one debt at a time. You can reclaim your freedom not overnight, and not through some shortcut, but through stewardship, discipline, wisdom, and faithful small decisions made every single day. If this video has given you a new way of seeing debt, subscribe to the Biblical Wealth Code. This channel is not about get-rich-quick promises. It is about ancient financial wisdom drawn from Scripture, from Solomon, from Proverbs, from Joseph, from the principles of stewardship that have stood for thousands of years and will continue to stand long after every market trend has come and gone. Subscribe to the Biblical Wealth Code for more ancient biblical wisdom on money, stewardship, and lasting wealth. And remember this, real wealth does not begin when you have more. It begins when you faithfully manage what you have already been given.